Hello everyone, my name is Riley Larson and I have grown up just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for my entire life. I created a short video to discuss and display the philanthropic efforts that Andrew Carnegie bestowed upon my city, and how those efforts can still be seen to this day. We will also discuss how Carnegie, who considered himself not religious and rejected the established church at the time, was seen as a man of God and a saint of sorts to those in the Pittsburgh community. I hope that you enjoy my video.
The Carnegie dictum was to spend the first third of one's life getting all the education one can, to spend the next third making all the money one can, and to spend the last third giving it all away for a worthwhile cause. Andrew Carnegie was born November 25, 1835, in Dunfermline, Scotland, to a family of home-based weavers. As industrialism swept over the country, it made home-based weaving obsolete, and the Carnegie family fell on hard times. His father Will and his mother Margaret sold all their belongings to book passage to America for themselves and their two sons, 13-year-old Andrew and 5-year-old Tom. After arriving on a boat from Scotland, the family landed in New York City, but Carnegie's family decided to settle in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Pittsburgh where they had friends and family relatives. At the age of 13, Carnegie's first job was a bobbin boy, changing spools of thread in a cotton mill for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in a Pittsburgh cotton factory. A year later, in 1849, Carnegie became a telegraph messenger boy in the Pittsburgh office for the Ohio Telegraph Company, at $2.50 per week, following a recommendation of his uncle, and within a year was promoted to operator. With his skill and knowledge of the railroad system, he secured himself a job with the Pennsylvania Railroad, where he was promoted to the superintendent of the Western Division at age 24. Carnegie's education and passion for reading was given a boost by Colonel James Anderson, a local generous Allegheny citizen, who opened his personal library of 400 volumes to working boys each Saturday night. Carnegie was a consistent borrower and a self-made man in both his economic development and his intellectual and cultural development. He was so grateful to Colonel Anderson for the use of his library that he, quote,
resolved, if wealth ever came to me, that other poor boys might receive opportunities similar to those for which we were indebted to the nobleman.
After the Civil War, Carnegie left the railroad business to devote his energies to the ironworks trade. Carnegie worked to develop several ironworks around the Pittsburgh area, eventually forming the Keystone Bridge Works and the Union Ironworks. Although he had left the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, he remained connected to its management, namely Thomas A. Scott and J. Edgar Thompson. He used his connection to the two men to acquire contracts for his Keystone Bridge Company. Carnegie made his fortune in the steel industry, controlling the most extensive integrated iron and steel operations ever owned by an individual in the United States. One of his innovations was in the cheap and efficient mass production of steel by adopting the Bessemer process, which allowed the high carbon content of pig iron to be burnt away in a controlled and rapid way during steel production. Steel prices dropped as a result, and the Bessemer steel was rapidly adopted for building. In the 1880s, Carnegie Steel was the largest manufacturer of pig iron, steel rails, and coke in the world, with a capacity to produce approximately 2,000 tons of steel per day. In a move to grow his steel empire in 1883, Carnegie bought the rival Homestead Steel Works, which included an extensive plant, a 425-mile-long railway, and a line of lake steamships. In 1901, Carnegie was 66 years old and was considering retirement. John Pierpont Morgan was a prominent banker and America's most important steel broker at the time. Morgan envisioned an integrated steel industry that would cut costs, lower prices to consumers, and raise wages to workers. To do this, Morgan would have to merge the multiple steel companies at the time into one giant corporation. Negotiations were concluded on March 2, 1901, and the result formed the United States Steel Corporation. Carnegie's share of this amounted to $225 million. In 2019 dollars, that's roughly $6.93 billion. His June 1889 article, The Gospel of Wealth, called on the rich to use their wealth to improve society, and thus stimulated a wave of philanthropy. Carnegie proposed that the best way of dealing with the new phenomenon of wealth inequality was for the wealthy to utilize their surplus means in a responsible and thoughtful manner.
Toil to be the duty of the man of wealth. First, to set an example of modest, unostentatious living cunning display to provide moderately for the legitimate wants of those dependent upon him, and after doing so, to consider all surplus revenues which come to him simply as just funds, which he is strictly bound, as a matter of duty, to administer in the manner which in his judgment is best calculated to produce the most beneficial results for the community. The man of wealth thus becoming the mere trustee and agent for his poorer brethren.
Carnegie spent his last years as a philanthropist. From 1901 forward, public attention was turned from the business practices which had enabled Carnegie to accumulate such a fortune to the public-spirited way in which he devoted himself to utilizing it on philanthropic projects. Carnegie was raised in a Presbyterian Christian home. He had a large appetite for learning and books, had intensive local and global business experiences, and staggering life interactions with powerful people near and far. Throughout his life, he challenged his own religious thinking and his Christian beliefs. In particular, he denounced the power and politics of the church as an institution. Instead, he articulated his own Christian behavior manual of sorts when he published The Gospel of Wealth. Here he articulated the moral obligation of the wealthy to give their money to others in society. Carnegie embodied the phrase, "Actions speak louder than words," and proceeded to donate approximately $350 million to philanthropic causes, including universities, libraries, churches, and in his own foundation. While Carnegie himself did not believe in a religious institution, his actions later in life showed that he acted as a man of God. One might say that he closely followed the commandment in John 13:34-35, "Love one another as I have loved you." Or in John 3:17-18, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." In total, Carnegie funded some 3,000 libraries located in 47 U.S. states, as well as in Canada, Britain, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the West Indies, and Fiji. In 1900, Carnegie gave $2 million to start the Carnegie Institute of Technology at Pittsburgh, and the same amount in 1902 to fund the Carnegie Institute at Washington, D.C. CIT is now known as the Carnegie Mellon University after it merged with the Mellon Institute of Industrial Research. Andrew Carnegie passed away on August 11, 1919, at the age of 83 in Lenox, Massachusetts.